Welcome to Foley's model train exhibit, which opened in March 2007. It is owned and funded by the City of Foley, who built a building to display it. The exhibit is 20 feet by 60 feet, with over a quarter-mile total length of track. It is operated by volunteers of the Foley Caboose Club. The Caboose Club had its beginning back in 1999 when a small group of men assembled every Thursday night at the Foley Museum to watch railroad videos and talk about life experiences centering on the railroad era.
We used to meet in the back of the station up yonder with Charles Ebert Jr. That's where we met for a couple of years.
In March 2004, a call came from Alan Goldman's attorney to Charles Ebert, asking if the City of Foley would be interested in being the recipient of a 1,200 square foot O-gauge train layout for general public display. He wanted to donate his collection to an organization that would maintain the trains and layout and open it to the public at no charge. The City of Foley agreed to take on the collection with that requirement.
This is the accumulation of about 11 and a half years open, which is now a good 2 years in the making. The layout was moved down here from Montgomery, Alabama, and it was given to the City of Foley as a free and gratis.
During construction of the new museum building, many of the members worked on salvaging usable items and lumber from the layout, which was now in storage in a building owned by the City of Foley. Construction moved steadily despite 2 tropical storms and a hurricane. The building was finally completed on January 10th, 2006.
I guess I showed up about January 2006 when the building was completed. And we started right away going to get lumber and materials and starting building the tables and putting all the track on it and the scenery and wiring it up to get to the stage about 14 months later, pretty much like you see it right now.
On January 14th, the building was turned over to the Caboose Club volunteers to begin the makeover into the Foley Model Railroad Museum. This was about the time the group became officially known as the Caboose Club.
The Caboose Club is kind of confusing because it really isn't a club. There's no officers, no bylaws, no constitution. Doesn't cost anything to join. It's really just a gathering of volunteers that like trains and railroads. We spend about as much time talking about old railroads and the real prototypes as we do our models out here. The models are really hard to find in the sense that they are accurate replicas of the original properties. Every one of us has a niche of one kind. Some of the guys really enjoy talking to the kids and the people. Some of them really like, I do maintenance. I do a lot of maintenance and repair work and track cleaning. There are a couple of guys that are really good in the electronics. We have digital control in all of our trains. There are 2 guys that can do all of that. So we've got computer guys, we've got mechanics, we've just got nice guys that like to talk to people and play with kids and play with toy trains. We don't own the trains, we're caring for them for the City of Foley. And so we maybe have a different attitude toward caring for them. Our own, if it was our own material, our own pieces, we might make harsher decisions or something. These, we baby them. We are making locomotives run that should have stopped running 20 years ago.
Volunteers began piecing together the pieces from the original layout to the new setup. They even began to add their own unique builds.
Some of the things that were scratch built by the volunteers, most of our drive-in movie theater, except the cars, the Ferris wheel that's right here. Going on down, you can look at the basketball court, the tennis court. In the city, there's the mailboxes, the signs, the garbage cans. Further on down, the line shaft machine shop, the fountain, which in the Bienville Square Park, made after Bienville Square, the big train shed. Back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Of course, I didn't, like any project, I didn't work on it, you know, every day or every hour, but I think I spent a couple of months building that.
Mhm.
I sure did. And the Ferris wheel, we had looked for one, you know, from all railroad supplies, and at that time we couldn't find anything that didn't look like a plastic toy, so I just drew that out and cut out the wood and glued that together.
All right, salvage yard is, the thought came from other members uh, as to something's missing. We don't have a junkyard because railroads traditionally went through maybe the worst parts of town. So if you looked out the window of a passenger train, you saw the backs of warehouses and you saw junkyards and of course that sort of thing. So what I did was I took one of the houses that were on the layout that someone would have lived in, and I basically trashed it. I made it look like almost like a haunted house. But there is somebody living in there, and his name is Giuseppe, and he owns the junkyard. And his dog that is with him, he's on the porch, is meaner than a junkyard dog. and there's a little pond there that is polluted because, of course, all the oil and stuff that's come out of the cars from the junkyard and whatever. So if you look at it closely, you can see a lot of detail there about, you know, a pretty ugly place on a otherwise pretty beautiful layout, but it provides a contrast.
I start normally with the moonshine still on the hill, and I work from there down to the gentleman up a tree, to the bear, keeping everybody away so we can have alcohol, okay? But the town of Evergreen itself is a very industrial town. Realize there's very few residential houses there, but you've got a sawmill, 2 lumber yards, a coal mine, and a farm, and a TV repair shop, all in Evergreen.
You know, people come in, and one of the big questions we get is this a model of Foley? And it's not a model of Foley. Those of us, you know, that grew up here would love for it to be a model of Foley, Alabama in 1950, but instead of taking the 14 months that we spent getting this thing set up to duplicate the buildings like they were in Foley back that time, it would have taken years. It just was not feasible, sadly. So different people call it different things. I call it Anytown, USA, or if I can look over there and see what's on the big water tank right in the middle. I can't remember what that is, but whatever is on that, we can call it that. And also we have that sawmill operation with the pond, like they used to do sometimes. You know, they would float the logs down the river, or in our case, they would just bring the logs and dump them in that pond and float them over to the sawmill and pull them up and saw them up. So that's a big thing we have there. And also the coal tipple is there, where the coal mine, whatever you want to call it, in that big building. And that's where they load coal on the railroad cars and ship them out from that. Coming a little bit over to your right, or a little further to the north, is the bigger town where we have the Union 76 station. The Union Railroad station and the big train shed. And right by that, we have a park. Now that park is modeled after Bienville Square in Mobile, Alabama, downtown old Mobile, Alabama. Except the real Bienville Square has a lot more beautiful live oak trees. We only have a couple in our park. But if you look at the bronze fountain that's in there, that's modeled after the one in Bienville Square. And the sidewalks, and to some degree the benches that are in that, are modeled after Bienville Square. And there's just this different things. You can see in the middle, you know, we have what's in a typical town. We have a school. It's a little hard to see. And if you look in that school, not many people see this, and we don't ever point it out. There's what I used to call as a kid some monkey bars. That actually I took some 16-inch welding rod and kind of modeled it after that monkey bars that we had on our school ground when I was a kid. In fact, those monkey bars, I think they're the exact same monkey bars are over in a park in southeast Foley, Alabama right now. In fact, I went over and looked at that when I was making that model. And there's just some different things, and as we tell people, it is the era of about 1950 or early, and so you don't see McDonald's or Walmarts or things you see in the modern towns today.
Pedestrian bridge, again, came from ideas from other members, and they said, well, you know, we have this suburban station, which was new a couple of years ago, and that was a kit, and I built that kit, and we had the suburban station that the trains come and they stop at. And then in the back, you have the big station, the L&N, supposedly Nashville shed. But there was no way for people to get from there to the suburban station. They said, we need a pedestrian bridge. So that was a summer project. I actually built that at home. And I brought it down here in a cardboard tube, like a UPS tube, and then installed it there were some little things we had to negotiate as far as size and fitting was concerned, but installed it on the layout as the pedestrian bridge. So it provides a way for the people to get from one place to another.
All of our railroads, all model railroads actually are measured in scale. There's O scale, HO, N, and so forth. And what scale is it's a relationship between the original, which we call a prototype locomotive, and then an O scale locomotive. And it's 1/48, which means a quarter inch is equal to a foot, is a nice easy way to think of it. So a prototype house would be 20 by 40 feet, let's say. Well, actually in real life, in O scale, that would be 5 inches by 10 inches. The average doorway, for example, is 7 feet tall. In O scale, that doorway would be 1 3/4 inches. A man is 6 feet tall. In O scale, he's 1.5 inches. That's how you are able to make the original look like the real thing. When you size it down, you take it down in scale. O scale is ours. The most popular one is HO, which is half O. They're 1/87th. And then there's N scale, and then the new thing called Z scale that, my goodness, you can't see that without a microscope.
There's never-ending volunteer work going on to maintain and upgrade the layout and equipment to keep it in good working condition and to present a pleasing, memorable viewing experience to the audience.
This is for track cleaning. We clean the track every Tuesday morning. The reason for that is the locomotives and the air and the normal ingredients in the air tend to build up on the track, and if it builds up enough, pretty soon the electrical continuity isn't any good and the locomotives don't run as they should. It takes three, plus a locomotive, it takes 3 vehicles for us to clean the track. We have alcohol on here that moistens the track as the locomotive pulls it. Right behind that is a heavy brush that is wiping the pads as we go. And then finally, we have this piece, and that is the trailer car, and that's polishing the track as it goes. So every Tuesday morning, the entire system gets washed with all the active tracks, including the trolley track and the N-scale track. Everything has to be cleaned. If we go 2 weeks without cleaning the track, you can put your finger on the rail and it'll just come up black. The pieces of carpeting that we use to wipe the track with, now this will have 3 distinct black lines on it when we are through cleaning the track. We clean all 4 tracks and we do it every Tuesday morning. It's part of the maintenance that has to be done. If we don't, the track isn't clean and the locomotives don't run right and nobody's happy. The way it is, it's bright and clean and shiny.
We're an authorized repair station for Mike's Train House, and that's what we have the majority of our work here in. We put in the various decoders and other things for them and repair. These are the items that are inside the engines. That's what makes them run. And they made us that way so that we could actually buy stuff for the city on a regular wholesale basis for the repairs that we do. So we are authorized repair station, but we only do it for our own work.
Volunteering here is a lot of fun. It makes you feel really important because the success of that exhibit is entirely dependent, really, on volunteers, how well we maintain the structures and how clean we keep the equipment and the maintenance of the equipment. All that is relevant to how hard the volunteers work to get it done.
I just never dreamed how successful it was going to be and how many visitors, were going to come by, and see this small railroad.
We are very fortunate to have the museum and the caboose club that operates the model train on a regular basis, and we hear about thousands and thousands of citizens that come through our area from several countries besides all the 50 United States come and visit the museum and the railroad system that we have and talk so favorably about it.
What's one of the biggest questions they have?
Which is my favorite train? And I say, they all are.